Hello group, Jeff here. I'm going to attempt to show why you want to remove your gradients. And I have an image that I took last year of the Eagle that has a lot of problems. It's got drift in two directions, great polar aligned by me, and it has some gradients, mostly from the moon. And I will show the importance of removing those gradients, and then as we go along I'll show some new stuff that I have, some actions, and the new Topaz stuff. I use two of the filters. I bought the utility bundle, which gives gigapixel, JPEG to RAW, DeNoise, and Sharpen. And we'll be using two DeNoise and Sharpen in this video. So let's go into Photoshop, and I'll open up Mr. Eagle. And you can see along the top in the right side is my drift. And if we look at the histogram, we have no little spikes, but if this was a darker black or even a redder red, we would see a little spike on the right and on the left from those two colors. So the first thing we want to do is we want to remove these drift discolorations, and I'm just going to crop those out. And it looks like I did a pretty good job. Look at the histogram. The histogram is not showing anything nasty. So now what I want to do is I'll just rotate the image. And this better represents the Eagle. And if we zoom in, we have a problem. You'll see that there's a little bit of a red halo on the bottom right of the stars, and that is an image shift. So if I click on the red and the green, you can see that there's a shift. And I have found that with the L-Enhance filter, under full moon or close to full moon conditions, I have no reason why it happens. I'm not an optical engineer, but with the moon out, I get a shift in my red channel. So we can fix that, but first what I want to do is select the RGB and go up and make the image a 16-bit image. 16-bit is like going from a 2-lane highway to a 16-lane highway. It just opens up the pipe, allows you to stretch further, and there's just more headroom in the whole image when you start playing with it. So I'm going to go back to my channels. I'm going to select the red, and the red is down and to the right. So what we want to do is Control A, which selects the image, the red channel image. I want to go to Move, and I want to go left and up. And if I click on the green channel, we will see that I no longer have a shift in the image. That's a good thing. And we can tell now that I don't have that red glow anymore, or the red halo on the bottom down here. So I'm going to zoom out I'm going to drop my selection, and you can see now that I have a red border from my move. And that's because we moved the red channel and the red channel only, and that will leave a red border, and it kind of shows the direction of the move. So now we need to remove this red border. So I'm going to do another crop. And if everything worked, I got rid of it. I did. And my image is now ready for some work. So I'm going to duplicate the this layer, and I'm going to call this channels, because what I want to do now is, oh, I'm sorry, let me rename this to AstroFlats. I want to remove the gradients that are in this image before I start working on my channels. And the reason why will become apparent. So I'm going to run the AstroFlats, and you can see with me just toggling that's with the plugin working and off, working and off. You can see that the image is now flatter. I have a bright spot right in here. And this was taken with the 14. And it even happens with my 8 and my Newtonian 8, where my center is hotter. So if we want to take a look and see what the flat looks like, we click on flat only, and you can see how uneven the gradients are. And if we were to attempt to do any post-processing on this image without removing the gradients first, we would be post-processing this. So anything we did would make it worse. When you start pushing, you're also pushing the gradient. And depending on how bright your gradient is, it can cause more problems than it's worth. So now, if you look at my image from left to right and up and down, the color is consistent. There's no bright spots. It's just data, and that's what we want. So I've gone from that, and that's not a bad looking image, but you could see that it's got like a soft, hazy white feel to it. Some of that is the way I shoot, because I shoot for post-processing. I really don't shoot for visual. I know that I'm going to be post-processing my stuff at a later date, so all of my settings are to achieve the most data that I can get. And if I was pushing this image for visual, the gradient would be worse, because it just is, just like in post-processing, when you start adding gain or exposure, you're amplifying any bad stuff that's in your optical train will come through in your image for visual. So I kind of back off on the gain, and I'm using just enough exposure so that I'm not blowing anything out, and that allows me to play with the white point to start pulling in some of that finer, lighter looking stuff that's in the image. So I'm happy with this. I should probably tell you what the smoothness is. If we look at the flat, the smoothness would be the fall off. So if I turn this off, that is the gradients from bright to dark. The edge cleanup would be any vignetting you have, or if your optics are such that you have a very light vignette in your optics, the edge cleanup is what's used to remove that. And then dark noise reduction would be any dark noise that you have in your image. You can take and use this to remove the dark noise. I don't have a lot because these aren't DSLR images. DSLRs have a lot of dark noise in them, so I kind of, I think the defaults are 20, 20, 20, and I'm at 32, 24, and 24. So I'm going to say okay to this. Oh, I'm sorry. That was not a good thing to do. I had flats only selected. You can bring the flat into Photoshop and then apply like a luminosity layer to it or something like that, but I prefer just to get rid of the flat and work with the image the way I want. So now I'm ready to start working on the channels. So I'm going to duplicate a layer and call this channels. And what I want to do in the channels is, if we zoom in, this image isn't bad, but I have some noise in it, and the noise is from the Sharpen. This was an image I took before I started doing my new Sharpen routine, which would be to build up the stack to like 16 frames with no Sharpen, and then on the 17th frame I'm adding 50 points of Sharpen. So I only went 40 frames in this stack, and that wasn't enough to remove all the noise. So I have a little extra noise in here. So what we're going to do is kind of pick an area in here. And I'm going to go to channels, and I'm going to select the red channel. And with the red channel selected, normally what I would do is I would copy this channel and put it into its own file, work on that channel, and then bring it back in. But because we're doing a movie, this is a little quicker. It takes less time to do it this way. So I'm going to open up the filter and go to Camera Raw. And once in Camera Raw, I'm going to click on Auto. And I'm going to back off to say 50. I leave all the settings the way they are. I'm going to up the texture to 16, clarity to 24, dehaze to 8. Then I'm going into details. I'm going to make my Sharpen 24. And the masking, if you hold the Alt key and you move the mask to the right or to the left, it's going to work on the whole image. And as you start moving the mask to the left or to the right, that will show you what it's going to work on. So 62 is about where I'd be happy. So it's just working on these edges, and that's what I want. Now I'm going to do a little noise reduction and some luminance contrast. And if I don't call out these numbers, you can just stop the video and you can take a peek at them. So I'm happy with this, and you will see the change hit. And already I'm liking where it's going. So we'll go into the green, and we're going to do the same thing. Filter, Camera Raw. I'm going to click on Auto. I'm going to back off just a tickle, right about in there. I'm going to up my texture, 16, clarity, 24. dehaze about 8. Going into details, I'm going to make my amount 24. Masking 62. Luminance noise is going to go to 24. 16 for the contrast. Is that okay? You see the difference? For my blue, I'm going to go camera raw. I'm going to click on auto. I'm going to back off a little bit. '90's good. I'm going to go to 16, 24, and 8. I'm going to go to 24. Masking is 62. Just make sure that it's picking up the same. Yeah, it is. It's just a softer image. 24. 16. Let's say okay. So I'll zoom out. And I'm going to click on RGB. And what this has done is combined all of my changes. And if we go into layers, I'm going to make a new called levels. And I'm going to bring back on a color by color basis. And what this will do is line the colors back up. So we'll do another level. And we'll just brighten it a little bit. Let's see, 188, 96. We'll leave it here for now. And now we're going to start the actions. And what actions are in Photoshop are any tool that's available in Photoshop is available as something that you can script. And back in the day when I used to process thousands of images, and before there was such a thing as batch processing, I would use the actions in Photoshop to make actions to do post work on thousands of frames. And I would have a folder that has the raw images and then another folder that would have the processed images. And I would load every image that's in that raw folder, would go through a script or an action that I created in Photoshop, and one by one it would do all those images and then save those images in another folder, that processed folder. And that's how I would post-process thousands of images to make my animations. It was very tedious, but it worked. And that's what these are. So if you don't get the little play button here, you just go into View and window, and make sure that you have actions checked. And that puts it in this window. So the first one I want to use is from Photographing Space, and it's called Clear Skies. And I'm going to use the 5th one. And you can see what it did. It really helped in these areas. I'm going to go to MinStar 5. Helped a little bit. And now I'm going to go to Enhance Deep Sky Objects and Reduce Stars. And this one is by Astronomy Tools. It's Pro Digital Software Astronomy Tools. And I'm going to run that. Oh, stop. I got to delete. I forgot to get rid of my... Try that again. You can't have a selection when you do that. And it's done some nice things. So now what I want to do is create a level. Go to Adjustments. Make a curve. And I'm going to lock here because anything above this starts bloating stars, and I can show you. Let me get rid of that. You can see how the stars are bloating. So I lock it here. And then anything I do below that, it doesn't bloat the stars too bad. And I'm kind of liking what that's doing. So we'll save this. And now what I want to do is I want to go in and create a layer for Sharpen. And we're going to use the Topaz Sharpen routine. And I have found now this is a fairly quick machine, and you can see it's taken a while. It just doesn't happen. I kind of like that one. Yeah, I like what that's done. So we're going to save this. And now I'm going to make another one called DeNoise. And we're going to use the Topaz DeNoise. Okay. So I have found that if I do selection mode auto, it does a better job. And I'm liking this. I'm going to bring up the chroma noise reduction just a tickle. Yep, I like that. We'll save this. So what I want to do now is show you a before and an after. So that's what we started with. It's got all kinds of gradients. We've already removed the bad stuff, and we went to this. Quite a difference. So I hope that this helps everyone who is new to Photoshop, kind of show you what an action will do, and what the Topaz stuff does when integrated within Photoshop. The key thing for me is that the first thing you want to do to your image is you want to remove those gradients. If you don't remove those gradients, I could never get this image. It just would not happen. I would have a nice looking image, but I still would have that glow, that overall white illumination would still be in that image, and I would be fighting that with every process I was trying to do. And I couldn't go, sometimes I couldn't go as far as I would want to go, just because I had those gradients within the image. So any questions, you can find me in the group, and I hope you liked the video. And one more thing before we killed the night, I just wanted to thank everybody that got my filter wrenches. I've added a new one. This is 1.25 inch deep throat, and they did better than I thought they would do. So I appreciate everyone that took a chance and bought the filter wrenches. So thank you. We'll catch you in the group.